Srimad Bhagavatam Introduction Part 4. During this time, a great Kashmir scholar named Keshava Kashmiri came to Navadvipa to hold discussions on the Shastras. The Kashmir Pandita was a champion scholar and he had travelled to all places of learning in India. Finally, he came to Navadvipa to contest the learned Panditas there. The Panditas of Navadvipa decided to match Nimai Pandita, Lord Chaitanya, with the Kashmir Pandita, thinking that if Nimai Pandita were defeated, they would have another chance to debate with the scholar, for Nimai Pandita was only a boy. And if the Kashmiri Pandita were defeated, then they would even be more glorified because people would proclaim that a mere boy of Navadvipa had defeated a champion scholar who was famous throughout India. It so happened that Nimai Pandita met Keshava Kashmiri while strolling on the banks of the Ganges. The Lord requested him to compose a Sanskrit verse in praise of the Ganges, and the Pandita within a short time composed 100 shlokas, reciting the verses like a storm and showing the strength of his vast learning. Nimai Pandita at once memorized all the shlokas without an error. He quoted the 64th shloka and pointed out certain rhetorical and literary irregularities. He particularly questioned the Pandita's use of the word bhavani bhartuhu. He pointed out that the use of this word was redundant. Bhavani means the wife of Shiva, and who else can be her bharta or husband? He also pointed out several other discrepancies, and the Kashmir Pandita was struck with wonder. He was astonished that a mere student of grammar could point out the literary mistakes of an erudite scholar. Although this matter was ended prior to any public meeting, the news spread like wildfire all over Navadvipa. But finally, Keshava Kashmiri was ordered in a dream by Saraswati, the goddess of learning, to submit to the Lord, and thus the Kashmir Pandita became a follower of the Lord. The Lord was then married with great pomp and gaiety, and at this time he began to preach the congregational chanting of the holy name of the Lord at Navadvipa. Some of the Brahmanas became envious of his popularity, and they put many hindrances on his path. They were so jealous that they finally took the matter before the Muslim magistrate at Navadvipa. Bengal was then governed by Pathans, and the governor of the province was Nawab Hussain Shah. The Muslim magistrate of Navadvipa took up the complaints of the Brahmanas seriously, and at first he warned the followers of Nimai Pandita not to chant loudly the name of Hari. But Lord Chaitanya asked his followers to disobey the orders of the Qazi, and they went on with their Sankirtana chanting party as usual. The magistrate then sent constables who interrupted a Sankirtana and broke some of the mridangas, drums. When Nimai Pandita heard of this incident, he organized a party for civil disobedience. He is the pioneer of the civil disobedience movement in India for the right cause. He organized a procession of 100,000 men with thousands of mridangas and kartalas, hand cymbals, and this procession passed over the roads of Navadvipa in defiance of the Qazi who had issued the order. Finally, the procession reached the house of the Qazi, who went upstairs out of fear of the masses. The great crowds assembled at the Qazi's house displayed a violent temper, but the Lord asked them to be peaceful. At this time, the Qazi came down and tried to pacify the Lord by addressing him as his nephew. He pointed out that Neelambara Chakravarti referred to him as an uncle, and consequently, Srimati Shachi Devi, the mother of Nimai Pandita, was his sister. He asked the Lord whether his sister's son would be angry at his maternal uncle, and the Lord replied that since the Qazi was his maternal uncle, he should receive his nephew well at his home. In this way, the issue was mitigated, and the two learned scholars began a long discussion on the Quran and Hindu Shastras. The Lord raised the question of cow killing, and the Qazi properly answered him by referring to the Quran. In turn, the Qazi also questioned the Lord about cow sacrifice in the Vedas, and the Lord replied that such sacrifice as mentioned in the Vedas is not actually cow killing. In that sacrifice, an old bull or cow was sacrificed for the sake of receiving a fresh, younger life by the power of Vedic mantras. But in the Kali Yuga, such cow sacrifices are forbidden because there are no qualified brahmanas capable of conducting such a sacrifice. In fact, in Kali Yuga, all yajnas sacrifices are forbidden because they are useless attempts by foolish men. In Kali Yuga, only the Sankirtana Yajna is recommended for all practical purposes. Speaking in this way, the Lord finally convinced the Qazi, who became the Lord's follower. The Qazi thenceforth declared that no one should hinder the Sankirtana movement which was started by the Lord, and the Qazi left this order in his will for the sake of progeny. The Qazi's tomb still exists in the area of Navadvipa, and Hindu pilgrims go there to show their respects. The Qazi's descendants are residents, and they never objected to Sankirtana even during the Hindu-Muslim riot days. This incident shows clearly that the Lord was not a so-called timid Vaishnava. A Vaishnava is a fearless devotee of the Lord, and for the right cause he can take any step suitable for the purpose. Arjuna was also a Vaishnava devotee of Lord Krishna, and he fought valiantly for the satisfaction of the Lord. Similarly, Vajrangaji or Hanuman was also a devotee of Lord Rama, and he gave lessons to the non-devotee party of Ravana. The principles of Vaishnavism are to satisfy the Lord by all means. A Vaishnava is by nature a non-violent, peaceful living being, and he has all the good qualities of God. But when the non-devotee blasphemes the Lord or his devotee, the Vaishnava never tolerates such impudency. After this incident, the Lord began to preach and propagate his Bhagavata Dharma or Sankirtana movement more vigorously. And whoever stood against this propagation of the Yuga Dharma or duty of the age was properly punished by various types of chastisement. Two Brahmana gentlemen named Chapala and Gopala, who also happened to be maternal uncles of the Lord, were inflicted with leprosy by way of chastisement, and later when they were repentant, they were accepted by the Lord. In the course of his preaching work, he used to send daily all his followers, including Srila Nityananda Prabhu and Thakura Haridasa, two chief whips of his party, from door to preach the Srimad Bhagavatam. All of Navadvipa was surcharged with his Sankirtana movement, and his headquarters were situated at the house of Srivasa Thakura and Sri Advaita Prabhu, two of his chief householder disciples. These two learned heads of the Brahmana community were the most ardent supporters of Lord Chaitanya's movement. Sri Advaita Prabhu was the chief cause for the advent of the Lord. When Advaita Prabhu saw that the total human society was full of materialistic activities and devoid of devotional service, which alone could save mankind from the threefold miseries of material existence, he, out of his causeless compassion for the age-worn human society, prayed fervently for the incarnation of the Lord and continually worshipped the Lord with water of the Ganges and leaves of the holy Tulasi tree. As far as preaching work in the Sankirtana movement was concerned, everyone was expected to do his daily share according to the order of the Lord.